The autumn air bit through my worn coat as I guided the twins down the village road, their small hands clutching mine with the fierce trust only children possess. Maya's fingers were sticky with remnants of the honey cake Mrs. Henderson had given us at the market, and Ethan kept tugging at my sleeve, chattering about the red leaves scattered across the cobblestones like drops of fire. I smiled down at them, my heart swelling with that peculiar mixture of exhaustion and fierce protectiveness that had become my constant companion these past 3 years. The village of Ashford had become our sanctuary, tucked away in the shadow of the northern mountains where the frost came early and stayed late. It was far enough from the capital, far enough from memories that still had claws. Here, I was simply Elena, the seamstress who lived in the cottage by the old mill, the young mother who kept to herself but always had a kind word for the baker's wife, the woman with pale blonde hair that caught the afternoon light like spun gold. Though I kept it braided and pinned away, hidden beneath modest scarves, no one here knew what I had been, what I had lost. The marketplace hummed with the lazy energy of late afternoon, vendors beginning to pack their wares as shadows lengthened across the square. I could smell wood smoke and cinnamon, hear the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer, feel the rough texture of the burlap shopping bag cutting into my shoulder. These sensory anchors kept me grounded, kept me present in this life I had carefully constructed from the ruins of my old one. "Mama, look!" Maya pointed toward the fountain where a cluster of pigeons fought over scattered breadcrumbs. Her eyes, so startlingly blue, so much like his, sparkled with delight. "We saw pigeons yesterday," Ethan said with the superior wisdom of being exactly 4 minutes older than his sister. "I want to see the horses." "Next week," I promised, though the stables were a place I avoided when possible. Too many wolves worked there, too many questions in their golden eyes when they caught my scent and couldn't quite place it. Being human in a world dominated by shifters had its advantages. We could disappear, blend in, become invisible. But sometimes that very invisibility felt like another kind of erasure. I had been something once, someone. The thought came unbidden, and I pushed it away as I had learned to do, focusing instead on steering the children around a puddle, on calculating whether we had enough coin for eggs, on anything except the phantom ache in my chest that 3 years hadn't quite healed. That's when I felt it, a prickle of awareness along my spine, that ancient instinct that whispered danger. The air itself seemed to shift, growing heavier, charged with a presence that made my breath catch and my heart hammer against my ribs. The crowd parted like water before a stone. I didn't need to look up to know who approached. My body recognized him before my mind could catch up, every nerve ending suddenly, terribly alive. The bond we had once shared was severed. I had made sure of that, had endured the breaking that nearly killed me. But some echoes never fully fade. Some ghosts refuse to stay buried. Damon Silvercrest, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the man I had fled from in the middle of the night 3 years ago, carrying nothing but a broken heart and a secret I couldn't bear to share. His presence commanded the space around him like gravity itself, bowed to his will. I could hear the whispers rippling through the marketplace, the sharp intakes of breath, the hurried bows and curtsies. Power radiated from him in waves that made my knees weak, made that traitorous part of me that had never stopped loving him surge forward like a tide. I kept my head down, kept walking, praying to gods I wasn't sure I believed in that he wouldn't notice us, that we could slip past like smoke, like shadows, like the nothing I had taught myself to become. "Mama?" Maya's voice was uncertain now, sensing my tension the way children always do. "Keep walking, sweetheart," I murmured, my voice steadier than I felt. But Ethan had stopped. Of course he had. My brave, curious boy who never met a boundary he didn't want to test. He was staring at something, someone, with the unabashed fascination of a child who hasn't yet learned fear. "That man is really tall," he announced, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet that had fallen over the square. My blood turned to ice. I looked up then, because I had no choice, because the moment I had dreaded for 3 years had finally arrived, and all my careful plans, all my running, had led me here, to this crossroads, this collision of past and present that I wasn't ready for and might never be. Damon stood perhaps 20 feet away, and he wasn't alone. A woman clung to his arm, elegant in deep emerald silk, that probably cost more than I earned in 6 months. She was beautiful in that effortless way some people are, with cascading dark hair and a smile that spoke of confidence, of belonging, of never having known what it meant to be cast aside. His fiancée. The rumors had reached even our remote village. The Alpha King was to be married, uniting the northern and eastern packs in an alliance that would reshape the entire territory. But Damon wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. Our eyes met across the cobblestones, and the world seemed to stop. 3 years collapsed into nothing. I saw the shock register in his features. Those sharp, aristocratic lines that had haunted my dreams. Those storm-gray eyes that had once looked at me with such tenderness. It made me believe in forever. I watched him go utterly still. The kind of stillness that only predators achieve. That moment before the lightning strike. Then his gaze dropped. To the children. To Maya with her honey-sticky fingers and blue eyes. To Ethan with his dark hair and stubborn chin. Damon's chin, I had realized when my son was barely 6 months old, the resemblance growing stronger with each passing day. I saw the calculation flash across his face. Saw the exact moment understanding dawned. His expression shifted through a dozen emotions too quickly for me to name them all. Confusion, shock, betrayal, rage, something that might have been pain if I didn't know better. The woman on his arm was speaking, asking something, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. The entire marketplace held its breath. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting. Elena. My name on his lips was a command, a question, an accusation. His voice rolled across the space between us like thunder, and I felt it in my bones, in my blood. In every place that had once been his and his alone, Maya pressed closer to my side, suddenly shy. Ethan, still fearless, still curious, tilted his head and asked the question I had prayed he would never have reason to ask. Mama, why is that man looking at us like that? I opened my mouth, but no words came. What could I possibly say? How could I explain that the tall, frightening man with eyes like winter storms was the reason they existed? The father who had never known about them, because I had run before I could find the courage to tell him. How could I explain that I had left not because I didn't love him, but because I had loved him too much to trap him in a bond he never wanted, with a mate who was too weak, too human, too broken to be what an Alpha King needed? Damon took a step forward. The woman on his arm stumbled slightly, confusion creasing her perfect features. The crowd seemed to collectively lean back, sensing the danger, the barely leashed power in his coiled muscles. Don't. The word left my lips before I could stop it, sharp and desperate. Please. He froze. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain. Definitely pain this time. Raw and undisguised. 3 years, he said, his voice low and rough. Meant only for me, though I knew the wolves in the crowd could hear every word. 3 years, Elena. Where? He broke off, his jaw clenching as he visibly fought for control. Are they? He couldn't even finish the question. Didn't need to. The twins were perfect mirrors of our union. Maya with my blonde hair and his eyes. Ethan with his coloring and my stubborn spirit. Anyone with eyes could see the truth written in their features, in the way they stood, in the unconscious tilt of Ethan's chin that was pure Silvercrest pride. I can explain, I whispered. Though I wasn't sure I could, wasn't sure there were words for the tangle of fear and love and self-preservation that had driven me into the night all those years ago. Damon? The woman's voice was sharp now, demanding, What is this? Who is this woman? He didn't answer her. Didn't even acknowledge she had spoken. His entire focus remained locked on me, on the children, on this impossible moment that was rewriting everything he thought he knew. The marketplace had gone silent as a grave. I could feel dozens of eyes on us, could sense the gossip already forming, the story that would spread like wildfire. The Alpha King confronting his lost mate, and the twin children he never knew existed, right here in the village square, with his bride-to-be clinging to his arm. It was a disaster. It was my worst nightmare come to life. And as Damon took another step toward us, his expression a storm of emotions I couldn't name, as Maya whimpered and pressed her face against my coat, as Ethan reached up with his small hand to touch my cheek in that comforting gesture he'd somehow learned all on his own, I realized that running was no longer an option. The past had finally caught up with me, and I had absolutely no idea what happened next. The silence stretched like a bowstring pulled too tight, ready to snap. I could feel my heart beating so hard I was certain everyone in the square could hear it. A frantic, terrified rhythm that matched the panic clawing up my throat. Damon's eyes never left mine, and in them I saw 100 questions, 1,000 accusations, and beneath it all, something that looked dangerously close to hope. I couldn't let him hope. Hope was the cruelest thing I could give him now. "Elena, I think we should talk." His voice had dropped lower, taking on that alpha command that made lesser wolves bare their throats in submission. But I wasn't a wolf. I was human, breakable, but also immune to the supernatural weight of his authority. It was one of the things that had drawn him to me once, my stubborn resistance to his power, the way I met his eyes when others looked away. Now it felt like a curse. "There's nothing to discuss," I managed, hating how my voice shook. I reached for Ethan's hand, prepared to gather both children and disappear into the crowd, into the safe anonymity I had worked so hard to build. But Ethan, my brave, impossible boy, chose that moment to step forward instead of back. "Are you a king?" he asked Damon directly, his child's voice clear in the terrible quiet. "Mrs. Henderson says kings live in castles and have lots of horses." Something cracked in Damon's expression, a softening around his eyes that I remembered too well. That gentleness he showed so rarely it felt like witnessing something sacred. He lowered himself slowly, carefully, until he was at Ethan's eye level, until they were face to face, father and son meeting for the first time. "I do live in a castle," Damon said, his voice stripped of its commanding edge, made human by wonder and barely suppressed emotion. "And I have many horses. Do you like horses?" "I love horses." Ethan's enthusiasm was immediate, his earlier wariness forgotten. "Mama says we can visit the stables next week, but I want to go every day. Maya's scared of them, but I'm not scared of anything." "Ethan, that's enough." I tried to inject firmness into my tone, but it came out pleading instead. I reached for him again, but he darted closer to Damon, drawn by that invisible thread that bound father to son, blood to blood. Damon's hand trembled, actually trembled, as he lifted it toward Ethan's face, then stopped himself, pulling back as if burned. The restraint cost him. I could see it in the tension of his shoulders, in the way his jaw clenched. He wanted to touch, to confirm, to claim. "Damon." The woman's voice sliced through the moment like a blade. She had released his arm and stood rigid, her beautiful face twisted with confusion and growing anger. "Explain this. Now." He rose slowly, his eyes never leaving the children. When he finally looked at the woman, his fiancée, I reminded myself, the one he had chosen to stand beside him, to rule with him, his expression had gone cold and distant. "Victoria, return to the carriage. This doesn't concern you." "Doesn't concern me?" Her voice rose, drawing even more attention from the gathered crowd. "You stop our journey home to stare at some village woman and her children like you've seen a ghost, and it doesn't concern me? I am to be your wife in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The wedding was in 3 weeks. The pain that lanced through my chest was sharp enough to steal my breath. I had known it was coming, the whole territory knew, but hearing it stated so plainly, so close to this impossible reunion, made it real in a way rumors never could. "Victoria." Damon's tone carried warning now, the alpha command bleeding back in. "I will explain later. For now, do as I ask." She stared at him for a long moment, her dark eyes flashing with fury, and something else. Fear, maybe, or the first bitter taste of understanding. Then she turned sharply, her silk dress swirling around her legs, and stalked toward an elegant carriage waiting at the edge of the square. The door slammed behind her with enough force to make several onlookers flinch. The crowd began to murmur, whispers spreading like wildfire through dry grass. I could imagine what they were saying, how this story would grow in the telling. The Alpha King's secret lover, his hidden children, the scandal that would rock the Northern Territories. I had to stop this, had to protect the twins from becoming pawns in court politics, from being swallowed by a world that would eat them alive. "We're leaving," I said, putting every ounce of steel I possessed into the words. I scooped Maya up. She was getting too big to carry easily, but I managed, and grabbed Ethan's hand firmly. "Come on, sweetheart. We need to go home." "But Mama, the king." "Now, Ethan." I turned away from Damon, from the storm in his eyes, from the future that could never be mine. I had made this choice 3 years ago when I fled in the night. I had made it every day since when I woke in our small cottage and thanked the gods for my children's health and safety. I would make it again now, but I had forgotten what it meant to turn your back on an alpha. His hand closed around my upper arm, not roughly but firmly enough that I couldn't simply walk away. The touch sent electricity singing through my veins, awakening nerve endings I had thought long dead. The bond might be severed, but my body remembered his, remembered the way we fit together, the way his touch could unmake me. "Let go," I whispered, not trusting myself to speak louder. "I let you go once, Elena. I won't make that mistake again." His voice was low, meant only for me, vibrating with barely controlled emotion. 3 years. You were gone 3 years, and you never told me. You never gave me a choice. The unfairness of that statement sparked something hot and fierce in my chest, burning away the fear. I whirled on him. Maya still clutched in my arms, and for the first time in 3 years, I let him see my anger. A choice? My laugh was bitter, edged with old pain, like the choice you gave me when you told the council I wasn't suitable to be your mate, when you said a human Luna would weaken the pack, when you made it clear that what we had was temporary, a youthful indiscretion you'd outgrow. He recoiled as if I'd struck him. "That's not... I never said that." "Who told you?" "It doesn't matter." And it didn't. Not anymore. The words had been said, the damage done. Whether they came directly from his mouth or from the council members who spoke with his authority made no difference. What matters is that I won't let you disrupt their lives. They're happy, they're safe, and they don't need a father who would be ashamed of them. Ashamed? The word came out strangled. He released my arm only to run both hands through his dark hair, a gesture of frustration I remembered too well. "Elena, I searched for you. For months, I sent trackers to every corner of the territory. I thought you were dead. I thought I'd lost you to rogues or worse, and it nearly destroyed me. And you think I'd be ashamed of them? Of my own children?" The raw pain in his voice made my resolve waver. This was the Damon I remembered from late nights and whispered confessions. The man beneath the crown who had held me like I was something precious, who had traced my scars and called them beautiful. But that man had also let me go, had let the council's words poison what we had chosen duty over love when it mattered most. "You have a fiancé," I said quietly, nodding toward the carriage where Victoria waited, her silhouette visible through the window. "You've moved on." "So have I." "Let it stay that way." "Moved on?" He laughed, and it was a terrible sound, hollow and sharp. "Is that what you think this is? Victoria is a political arrangement. The Eastern Pax needed an alliance, and I needed..." He broke off, jaw clenching. "I needed to stop hoping you'd come back." Maya chose that moment to wiggle in my arms. Uncomfortable with being held so long, I set her down, and she immediately moved to Ethan's side, the two of them instinctively drawing together in the face of adult tensions they couldn't fully understand. "Why is everyone staring, Mama?" Maya asked in a small voice. She had always been the more sensitive twin, attuned to emotions and atmospheres in a way that sometimes worried me. "Because your father is an alpha king, and I'm the fool who fell in love with him," I thought. "Because we're creating a scandal that will be talked about for years. Because I've just ruined any chance you had of a normal, peaceful life. Let's discuss this somewhere private," Damon said, his alpha voice back in force. It wasn't a request. "You're home. Now. No." I put myself between him and the children. A futile gesture. What could I possibly do against his strength? But instinct demanded it. "You don't get to command me. Not anymore." "Elena." He stepped closer, and I could smell him now. Pine and winter air, and something uniquely his that made my head spin. "I'm not leaving without answers. Without..." His eyes dropped to the twins again, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. "Without understanding. Please." That last word cost him. Alphas didn't beg. Kings certainly didn't. But there it was, raw and honest. A plea that stripped away all his power and left only the man I had loved. The man I still loved. Damn me for a fool. "One conversation," I heard myself say, even as every survival instinct screamed at me to refuse. "But not at my home. The old mill. In 1 hour. Come alone." He nodded. relief and determination warring in his expression. Then, moving slowly, carefully, he crouched down again to the children's level. Ethan, Maya, he said their names like a prayer, like something sacred. I'm very glad to have met you both. Your mother is right. You should go home now. But I hope I'll see you again soon. Ethan, never one to miss an opportunity, grinned widely. Will you bring horses? Despite everything, despite the disaster unfolding around us, Damon smiled. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. I'll bring all the horses you want. Promise? I promise. The ease of it, the natural way they spoke to each other, made my heart ache. This was what I had stolen from them both. This connection, this beginning. And I still wasn't sure if I'd been right to do it, or if I'd made the worst mistake of my life. I gathered the children and began walking, not looking back, feeling Damon's gaze on us like a physical weight. The crowd parted silently, their faces a mixture of curiosity, judgment, and pity. Tomorrow, everyone in Ashford would know my secret. By next week, it would spread throughout the territory. The life I had built was crumbling, and I had 1 hour to decide what I would build from the ruins. The walk back to our cottage felt like moving through water, each step requiring more effort than the last. Maya and Ethan chattered beside me, their earlier tension forgotten in the resilience of childhood, but their voices seemed distant, muffled by the roaring in my ears. My hands trembled as I unlocked our door, the key scraping against the lock before finally sliding home. Our cottage was small but warm, filled with the evidence of our life together. Ethan's drawings pinned to the walls, Maya's collection of smooth river stones arranged on the windowsill, the quilt I'd sewn last winter draped over our worn sofa. It smelled of lavender and bread, of safety and home. Looking at it now, I felt the fragility of everything I'd built, how easily it could all come apart. Can we have supper now? Ethan asked, already pulling off his coat. I'm starving. In a bit, sweetheart. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Too high, too tight. Mama needs to go out for a little while. Mrs. Chen next door will watch you. Again? Maya's lower lip jutted out. You went out yesterday too. Guilt twisted in my stomach. I had been taking extra sewing commissions lately, working late into the night to save money for winter, for the children's growing appetites, for the future I was always planning but never quite reaching. Now even that seemed uncertain. I know, baby. I'm sorry. But this is important. I knelt before them, taking each small hand in mine. Listen to me. That man we saw today, the king, he might come around sometimes. If he does, I need you to be polite but careful. Don't go anywhere alone with anyone, even if they seem nice. And if anyone asks you questions about him, about me, you tell them to talk to Mama first. Understand? Ethan's brow furrowed. Why would people ask us questions? How did I explain court intrigue to a 4-year-old? How did I convey that they had just become the most valuable pieces on a chessboard they didn't even know existed? Just promise me, both of you. They promised, though I could see the confusion in their eyes. I kissed their foreheads, breathing in their scent, honey and grass and innocence, before bundling them next door to Mrs. Chen, a kind elderly woman who asked no questions when I pressed coins into her palm and begged her to keep the children inside, away from windows, away from anyone who might come looking. The old mill sat at the edge of the village, where the river narrowed and quickened, its water wheel long since fallen into disrepair. Abandoned for years, it had become a place for village children to dare each other to explore, for lovers to meet in secret. I had avoided it carefully since settling in Ashford. Too many memories attached to mills and rivers in the night I'd fled. But it was private. And right now, privacy was worth more than comfort. The sun hung low on the horizon as I approached, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. The mill's shadow stretched long across the grass, and I could hear the rush of water, smell the damp earth and rotting wood. My breath came quick and shallow as I pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by gaps in the walls where boards had fallen away. Dust motes danced in the slanting light. Old machinery hulked in corners like sleeping beasts, and the air tasted of abandonment and decay. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite my coat. I didn't have to wait long. I felt him before I heard him. That presence that made the air itself seem to thicken. Then came his footsteps, measured and deliberate, and Damon filled the doorway, backlit by the dying sun so I couldn't see his face, only his silhouette, broad-shouldered and powerful. He stepped inside, and the mill seemed to shrink around his presence. Without the crowd, without Victoria or the children, the space between us felt both vast and impossibly small. "You came alone?" I asked, though I could sense no other heartbeats nearby, no witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. "Did you think I'd bring my entire guard to confront the woman who broke my heart?" His voice was rough, stripped of its earlier command. He moved closer, and I could see his face now, the sharp angles thrown into relief by shadow, his eyes burning with intensity. "Or perhaps you thought I'd bring Victoria, let her witness what a fool I've been." "You're not a fool." The words came automatically. "You're doing what kings do, making alliances, securing your borders, choosing duty over—" I couldn't finish. "Over us. Over me." "Is that what you think? That I chose this?" He laughed, bitter and sharp. "Elena, I chose nothing. You left. You disappeared without a word, without a trace, and you took any choice I might have had with you." "I left because I had to." The words burst from me. 3 years of pent-up justification and pain. "I heard them, Damon. The council. I heard them tell you that a human Luna would destroy the Pack's reputation, that our children would be weak, that I was a liability you couldn't afford. And you said you'd think about it. You promised to consider their concerns." He went very still. "You were listening that night, the emergency session. I was coming to surprise you. I'd made your favorite dinner, wanted to—" I swallowed hard, remembering the girl I'd been, so naive, so hopeful. "It doesn't matter what I wanted. What matters is what I heard. Counselor Thorne was very eloquent about all the reasons you couldn't keep me. And you didn't defend me, Damon. You didn't defend us. Because I was trying to protect you." His voice rose, echoing off the mill's walls. "Do you have any idea what those vultures are capable of? Half of them wanted you gone, and the other half wanted to use you as leverage against me. If I'd shown how much you meant to me, how deeply the bond ran, they would have torn you apart to weaken me. So yes, I promised to consider their concerns. I promised to deliberate and discuss, and all the political theater they needed, and then I planned to tell them all to go to hell." I stared at him, my carefully constructed understanding of that night beginning to crack. "What?" He closed the distance between us in 3 strides, and suddenly he was there, close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes, the new lines around his mouth that hadn't been there 3 years ago, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, making me want to lean into it, into him. "I was going to announce our engagement the next week," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I had commissioned a ring, prepared a speech, even convinced my mother to come out of retirement to stand with us. I was going to show the entire territory that you were mine, that anyone who wanted to harm you would have to go through me first. But when I came to tell you, to share the plan, you were gone. Your clothes, your books, even that ridiculous mug you loved with the chipped handle. All of it, gone, like you'd never existed. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. No, you're lying. You were relieved I left. The searches were just for show, to save face. Relieved? He grabbed my shoulders, not hard but firm, forcing me to look at him. "Elena, I nearly went feral. For 3 months I couldn't shift back to human form, because my wolf was convinced if we kept searching, kept hunting, we'd find your scent, your trail, something. My mother had to physically restrain me from declaring war on the rogue packs I was certain had taken you. I drove my entire council to the brink of rebellion because I refused to function, refused to rule, refused to do anything except search for you." Tears burned in my eyes, blurring his face. "Then why the engagement? Why Victoria?" "Because I was dying, Elena." His hands slid from my shoulders to cut my face, his thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. My wolf was broken. I was broken. And my mother, in her wisdom, reminded me that I had a duty to my people that superseded my personal grief. That if I couldn't have the mate I wanted, I could at least secure the peace they needed. So I agreed to the arrangement with the Eastern Packs. I let them parade Victoria in front of me like a prize mare. I went through the motions of courtship, because the alternative was admitting that the only woman I'd ever loved had chosen to leave me. And I couldn't. His voice cracked. I couldn't bear for them to know how completely you'd destroyed me. I didn't want to destroy you. My hands came up to cover his, pressing them against my cheeks. I wanted to save you from the scandal, from the weakness of having a human mate, from children who would be perfect, he interrupted fiercely. They would be perfect because they're ours, because they're half you. And you, Elena, you were never weak. You were the strongest person I'd ever met. The woman who looked at an alpha king and saw just a man. The woman who called me on my bullshit and made me laugh and taught me that power isn't always about dominance. That sometimes it's about knowing when to yield, when to listen, when to let yourself be vulnerable. His forehead pressed against mine, our breath mingling in the small space between us. You were my balance, and without you, I've been nothing but a weapon the council points wherever they need a threat. The mill fell silent except for our breathing, harsh and uneven, and the rush of the river outside. 3 years of assumptions crumbling, 3 years of certainty revealed as misunderstanding built on fear and incomplete information. I was pregnant, I whispered. When I left. I didn't know it yet, but I was. And by the time I realized, I was already 2 territories away, already committed to disappearing. I told myself it was better this way. That you'd find someone appropriate, someone strong, someone who could give you the heirs the pack needed without the stigma of human blood. His hands tightened on my face. And our children? Maya and Ethan? You thought I wouldn't want them? I thought you couldn't afford to want them. There's a difference. I pulled back enough to see his face clearly. Damon, be honest. If I had stayed, if I'd told you about the pregnancy, what would have happened? The council would have used it against you. They would have called for my removal, or worse. And you would have been forced to choose between your mate and your throne. I couldn't do that to you. I loved you too much to make you choose. So you chose for me. His voice was flat now, the earlier emotion draining away into something harder, colder. You decided, all on your own, that I was too weak to fight for what I wanted, that my love for you wasn't worth the political cost. You made yourself into a martyr and left me to grieve a ghost. Put that way, it sounded selfish. Cowardly, even. I was scared, I admitted, the truth raw and ugly. I was 22 years old, human in a wolf's world, and pregnant with twins by a king who I'd just heard his council call a mistake. I panicked. I ran. And yes, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have trusted you, but Damon... I grabbed his shirt, fisting the expensive fabric in my hands. I grew up watching my mother diminish herself for my father, making herself smaller and smaller until there was nothing left. I swore I'd never do that, and staying. Fighting that battle while pregnant and vulnerable. It felt like signing up for that same slow erasure. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. Outside, the sun had fully set, and darkness crept into the mill's corners, making the space feel intimate and dangerous all at once. What now? He finally asked. You've hidden them from me for 3 years. You've built a life here, away from the court, away from me. And in 3 weeks, I'm supposed to marry another woman and unite 2 territories. So tell me, Elena, what the hell do we do now? I had no answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know. The children changed everything. They deserved to know their father. They deserved the opportunities his name could provide, the protection of his status, but they also deserved a childhood free from court politics, from the constant scrutiny and danger that came with being royal heirs. And I deserved. What? What did I deserve after the choice I'd made? I won't keep them from you, I said slowly, thinking through each word, but I won't let them become pawns in your court either. They stay here, with me, living normal lives. You can visit, get to know them, but on my terms. No claims, no announcements, no dragging them into your world until they're old enough to understand what that means. Unacceptable. His voice went hard, alpha command bleeding back in. They're my children, Elena, my heirs. I have a right. You have no rights. I shoved at his chest, anger surging hot and bright. You gave up your rights when you didn't fight for me 3 years ago, when you let me walk out believing I was disposable. These children are here, healthy and happy, because I made sure of it, because I worked myself to exhaustion giving them everything they needed. So don't you dare walk back into our lives and start making demands. We stood there, locked in a battle of wills, neither willing to yield. The old machinery creaked around us as wind whistled through the gaps in the walls. And in that tense silence, I heard something else. The snap of a branch outside, too deliberate to be an animal. Damon heard it too. His entire body shifted, going from angry lover to lethal predator in a heartbeat. He pushed me behind him, one arm coming up in a protective gesture that was pure instinct. "Someone's here," he murmured, his voice barely a breath. "Multiple someones. Wolves. And they don't smell like mine." My blood ran cold. "Eastern Pack?" "No." His jaw clenched. "Rogues. At least 6 of them, surrounding the mill." Before I could process that, before I could even begin to panic, the door exploded inward in a shower of splinters, and our fragile moment of reconciliation shattered into something far more dangerous. The rogues poured through the shattered doorway like a dark flood, their eyes gleaming amber in the darkness, their forms half-shifted, that dangerous in-between state where they retained human cunning, but gained animal savagery. I counted 7. No. 8 of them, their clothes torn and dirty, their scents wild and unwashed. These weren't organized pack wolves. These were the lost ones, the banished, the kind who had nothing to lose and everything to gain from chaos. Damon's transformation was instantaneous. One moment he stood beside me in human form. The next, his body rippled and expanded, bones restructuring with sounds that should have been sickening but were somehow natural, inevitable. His wolf was massive, easily twice the size of any normal shifter. His fur so dark, it seemed to absorb light, his eyes burning silver white with alpha power. He placed himself between me and the rogues, a living shield, a snarl rumbling from his chest that made the mill's remaining windows rattle. "Well, well," the voice came from the largest of the rogues, a scarred man who remained in human form, though his eyes betrayed his wolf, lurking just beneath the surface. The rumors were true. The Alpha King himself, sneaking around a broken mill with his little human whore. And here we thought it was just village gossip. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. My mind raced, not for myself, but for the children. If these rogues knew about me, if they'd been watching, did they know about Maya and Ethan? Were they safe with Mrs. Chen? Or had I led danger straight to their door? Damon's growl deepened, a sound that vibrated through the floorboards, through my bones. Even in wolf form, his message was clear. Leave now, or die. The scarred rogue laughed, the sound grating and cruel. "Oh, we're not here for you, Your Majesty, though taking down an Alpha King would certainly make our reputation. No, we're here for her." He pointed at me with a finger missing its tip. "The Eastern Packs are very interested in why you'd cancel your wedding tour to chase down some seamstress, and they're willing to pay handsomely for information, even more for leverage." The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. Victoria. She must have sent word to her family, to the Eastern Alliance about the scene in the village square, and they, smelling opportunity, had dispatched these rogues to investigate, or to eliminate the problem I represented. Before I could voice any of this, Damon lunged. His attack was brutal and efficient, centuries of alpha dominance distilled into pure violence. The first rogue didn't even have time to scream before Damon's jaws closed around his throat, the wet sound of tearing quickly silenced. The body dropped, and Damon was already moving to the next target, his massive form a blur of darkness and fury. But 8 against 1, even when the one was an Alpha King, were bad odds. 2 rogues broke away from the pack, circling around the fight, their intent clear. They were coming for me. I scrambled backward, searching desperately for anything I could use as a weapon. My hand closed around a piece of old pipe, rusted and barely substantial, but it was something. The first rogue reached me in his half-shifted form, all extended claws and too many teeth. I swung the pipe with everything I had, catching him across the temple. The impact jarred up my arms, and the pipe bent, but held. He staggered, more surprised than hurt, and that surprise gave me the seconds I needed to dodge his retaliatory swipe. Damon. I didn't know if I was calling for help or warning him. The distinction seemed irrelevant when claws raked across my shoulder, tearing through my coat and finding flesh beneath. Pain exploded hot and sharp, and I felt blood, my blood, begin to soak through the fabric. Damon's howl shook the mill's foundations. I'd never heard anything like it, pure rage-given voice, the sound of a mate bond that might be severed but still resonated with protective fury. He abandoned his current opponent mid-fight, launching himself across the space to reach me. What happened next occurred too fast for my human eyes to fully process. Damon collided with my attacker like a force of nature, and the rogue simply ceased. One moment a threat, the next a broken thing that would never threaten anyone again. The second rogue who'd been circling me took one look at Damon's blood-soaked muzzle and actually whimpered, backing away with his ears flat, submission in every line of his body. It wasn't enough to save him. I turned away from what followed, pressing my hand against my wounded shoulder, feeling warm blood pulse between my fingers. The sounds behind me were visceral and final. The wet crunch of bone, the gurgle of last breaths, the heavy thump of bodies hitting the floor. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay upright, to stay conscious, to not become more of a liability than I already was. When silence finally fell, broken only by harsh breathing and the drip of blood on old wood, I dared to look back. The mill floor was a massacre. Bodies lay scattered like broken dolls, and in the center of it all stood Damon, still in wolf form, his dark fur matted with blood, theirs, and some his own, I realized, seeing the gashes along his side and shoulder where claws had found purchase. His sides heaved with exertion, and his eyes, when they found mine, were still more wolf than man, wild with adrenaline and killing rage. Damon, I said softly, carefully, the way you'd approach any dangerous predator. It's over. You can shift back now. For a moment, I wasn't sure he recognized me. His lips pulled back from teeth designed to kill, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. The wolf saw only threat, only the need to eliminate, to protect. Then I did something monumentally stupid or possibly brilliant. I took a step toward him instead of away. It's me, I whispered, extending my uninjured arm, letting my blood scent reach him, human and fragile and his. It's Elena. You saved me. You can come back now. The growl stuttered, stopped. Those silver-white eyes blinked, and I saw rationality beginning to resurface, consciousness returning from wherever wolves went when the killing rage took them. His form shimmered, bones restructuring again, and then Damon knelt naked on the blood-soaked floor, his chest heaving, his hands shaking. Elena. My name was a rasp, barely human. Your shoulder, you're hurt. I'm fine. It's not deep, a lie. It hurt like hell, and was still bleeding. But he didn't need to carry that guilt on top of everything else. You're hurt, too. He looked down at himself, as if noticing his wounds for the first time, then dismissed them with a shake of his head. I heal fast. You don't. He stood, swaying slightly, and pulled off what remained of his torn shirt, pressing it against my shoulder. His hands were surprisingly gentle, at odds with the violence they'd just committed. We need to get you to a healer. We need to get out of here before someone comes to investigate the noise. I pressed the shirt tighter against my wound, hissing at the pain. And I need to check on the children. If these rogues found us, if they were hired by the Eastern Pax, they'll know about Maya and Ethan. Damon finished grimly. Fuck. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving bloody streaks. We need to move them. Tonight. Somewhere the Eastern Alliance can't reach. The castle, I said, even though the words tasted like surrender. It's the only place defensible enough. You'd come? After everything? After this? He gestured at the carnage surrounding us. You'd trust me to protect them? I met his eyes, seeing past the blood and violence to the man who'd thrown himself into impossible odds to save me, who'd killed 8 wolves without hesitation because I'd been threatened. I'd trust you with their lives. I always did. It was my own heart I couldn't trust you with. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, hope, determination. Elena, I need you to understand something. That engagement, Victoria, all of it, it ends tonight. I don't care about political alliances or border treaties. I don't care if the Eastern Pax declare war. My children will not grow up thinking their father chose politics over them. And you? He cupped my face with one bloody hand, forcing me to meet his eyes. You will never again doubt that you are the only woman I've ever wanted, the only mate I'll ever claim. Severed bond or not, you're mine. You've always been mine. Damon, you can't just, I'm an alpha king. I can do whatever the hell I want. A ghost of his old arrogance flickered across his face. Let them try to stop me. The absurdity of it. Standing in a mill full of corpses, both of us bleeding and battered, declaring love and making ultimatums. struck me suddenly. A laugh bubbled up, slightly hysterical, and once it started, I couldn't stop it. "What?" Damon demanded, though I could see his own lips twitching. "Nothing. Everything. Us." I gestured between us with my good arm. 3 years of carefully avoiding each other, and we manage a reunion, an emotional revelation, and a rogue attack all in one evening. We've never done anything halfway, have we? "No," he agreed, his smile turning soft, almost tender. "We haven't." The moment broke when I swayed, blood loss and shock finally catching up with me. Damon caught me before I could fall, lifting me easily despite his own injuries. "I can walk," I protested weakly. "Humor me." He carried me toward the door, stepping carefully over bodies, his warmth seeping into me and making me realize how cold I'd become. "We'll get the children, take them to the castle, and then we're having a very long conversation about the future. No more running, Elena. No more hiding." Agreed? I should have argued, should have protested the high-handedness, the assumption that I'd simply fall in line with his plans. But I was tired, so tired of being strong alone, of making every decision in isolation, of carrying the weight of our family's survival on shoulders that had never been built for such burdens. "Agreed," I whispered against his chest. "But Damon? Victoria won't accept this quietly." "Let her try." His arms tightened around me. "I've already lost you once. I won't make that mistake again, no matter who I have to defy." We emerged from the mill into full darkness, the moon hidden behind clouds, the river rushing loud and indifferent beside us. In the distance, I could see the lights of Ashford, could picture Mrs. Chen's cottage where my children slept, unaware that their entire world was about to change. Fear and hope warred in my chest, neither winning. But as Damon carried me toward the village, toward our children, toward a future I'd stopped letting myself imagine, I realized something important. I wasn't facing this alone anymore. For better or worse, the Alpha King had returned to claim his family. And this time, I was going to let him. The walk back to Ashford should have been peaceful, but tension coiled in my stomach with every step. Damon had shifted back to wolf form, easier to travel quickly and defend if needed. And I clung to his back, my fingers tangled in his thick fur, my wounded shoulder screaming with every jolt. The forest around us was too quiet, the usual night sounds conspicuously absent, as if the very trees were holding their breath. We were halfway to the village when Damon stopped abruptly, his entire body going rigid beneath me. A growl rumbled through him, and I felt more than heard him scent the air, analyzing, calculating. Then I smelled it too. Smoke. Not the pleasant wood smoke of cooking fires, but the acrid chemical stench of something burning that shouldn't be. "No," I breathed, even as Damon broke into a run, his powerful legs eating up the distance. "No, please no." We burst from the tree line to chaos. 3 cottages were ablaze, including Mrs. Chen's, flames licking up into the night sky and painting everything in hellish orange and red. Villagers ran with buckets, shouting and crying, trying desperately to control the inferno. And in the center of it all, I saw her, Victoria, still in her elegant dress, her face illuminated by the flames, her expression cold and satisfied. "The children," I gasped, sliding off Damon's back and stumbling forward despite my injury, despite the pain, despite everything. "Maya! Ethan!" Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Looking for something, Elena? Or should I say, someone?" My world narrowed to a single point of absolute terror. The flames roared, consuming Mrs. Chen's cottage with a hunger that seemed almost alive, and all I could think was that my children were inside, that I had failed them, that the one job I had, keeping them safe, had shattered in a single evening of poor choices and worse timing. "Where are they?" The scream tore from my throat, raw and animal. I lunged toward the burning cottage, but arms caught me. Damon shifted back to human form, naked and bleeding, but impossibly strong. "Let me go. My babies are in there." "They're not." Victoria's voice cut through my panic like ice water. She gestured casually, and from behind her stepped 2 of her guards, and between them, thank every god that might be listening, walked Maya and Ethan, frightened but unharmed, Mrs. Chen shuffling behind them with tears streaming down her weathered face. The relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. Damon held me upright, his grip the only thing keeping me standing as I stared at my children, whole and safe and terrified. "Mama!" Maya's cry was heartbroken, and she tried to run to me, but the guard's hand on her shoulder kept her in place. "Let them go, Victoria." Damon's voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "Whatever game you're playing, they have no part in it." "Game?" Victoria laughed, sharp and bitter. "This isn't a game, Damon. This is reality. Did you think you could humiliate me in front of an entire village, chase after your human whore, and I would simply accept it? Did you think my family would accept it?" She took a step forward, her silk dress rustling, her beautiful face twisted with fury. "The Eastern Alliance isn't some political convenience you can discard when something more appealing catches your eye. We are your equals, your partners, and we will not be disrespected. You set fire to a village because your pride was wounded. I found my voice, found my anger beneath the fear. You endangered children, innocent people, because you couldn't handle being second choice." "Second choice?" Her eyes flashed. "I'm not second to anything. I'm an Alpha's daughter, a pack princess, bred and trained for exactly this role. And you," she looked me up and down with undisguised contempt, "you're a human, a fragile, weak, temporary amusement that should have known her place. But instead, you spread your legs for a king and got lucky twice." Her gaze cut to the twins. "Those children are an embarrassment. Half-breed abominations that weaken the bloodline and make a mockery of everything we are." Damon moved before I could even process the words, his speed inhuman, his hand closing around Victoria's throat. He lifted her off the ground, his eyes blazing silver, his control hanging by the thinnest thread. "Say that again," he whispered, each word enunciated with terrifying precision. "Call my children abominations one more time, and political alliance be damned. I will tear out your spine and send it back to your father as a declaration of war." Victoria clawed at his hand, her face reddening, but she managed to choke out, "Kill me. Eastern packs. War anyway. You've already chosen." He held her there for one more endless moment, and I saw him weighing it, his duty against his rage, politics against protection. Then, with a sound of disgust, he threw her to the ground. She landed hard, gasping and coughing, her hand going to her bruised throat. "The engagement is ended," Damon announced, his voice carrying across the square where villagers had gathered, drawn by the flames and the drama. "Effective immediately. Whatever alliance your family sought dies with your actions tonight. You endangered innocents, threatened children, and destroyed property under my protection. Return to the Eastern Territories, and tell your father that any act of aggression will be met with the full force of the Northern Packs." Victoria struggled to her feet, her elegance shattered, her eyes promising murder. "You'll regret this. My father will not accept such an insult. The other Alphas will not support you in this. Then let them come." Damon's smile was all teeth, all predator. "I've been too soft, too willing to compromise. Maybe it's time they remembered what an Alpha King can do when properly motivated." He turned his back on her, the ultimate dismissal, and walked to where the guards still held the children. One look from him, one pulse of his Alpha authority, and they released Maya and Ethan immediately, stepping back with lowered eyes. The twins ran to me, and I collapsed to my knees to catch them, ignoring the screaming pain in my shoulder as I wrapped my arms around them, breathing in their scent, feeling their solid warmth, their racing hearts, their aliveness. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Tell me you're okay." The words tumbled out between kisses pressed to their hair, their cheeks, anywhere I could reach. "We're okay, Mama," Ethan said, though his voice shook. The lady was mean, but the old lady protected us. She said bad words I'm not supposed to repeat. Despite everything, I laughed. A watery, broken sound. "Mrs. Chen is a hero. We'll thank her properly later." The king came back. Maya whispered against my neck. "Is he really our papa?" The question stopped my heart. In all the chaos, I hadn't thought about what they'd heard, what they'd understood from the confrontation in the square, from the events of this impossible evening. I pulled back enough to see both their faces, so young, so innocent, looking at me with absolute trust that I would tell them the truth, that I would make sense of the madness. "Yes," I said simply, because they deserved that honesty. He is. Why didn't you tell us? Ethan's lip trembled. Don't papas want their children? The accusation in his small voice nearly broke me. Oh, sweetheart. Your papa didn't know about you. I made a mistake. A big one. And I kept you secret because I was scared, but he wants you very much. I promise. I do. Damon knelt beside us, and I saw tears on his face, actual tears running down the Alpha King's cheeks, as he looked at his children, his voice thick with emotion. I want you more than anything, and I know I miss so much. Your first words, your first steps, 3 years of watching you grow, and I can never get that back. But if you'll let me, if your mama will let me, I want to be your papa now. I want to keep you safe and teach you things and bring you all the horses you could ever want to meet. Ethan studied him with the seriousness only a 4-year-old can muster. Will you protect Mama too? She gets sad sometimes when she thinks we're sleeping, and she works too hard and her hands hurt. I will protect your mama, Damon said solemnly. With everything I have, I promise. Okay then. Ethan held out his small hand. You can be our papa. Damon took that little hand like it was something sacred, something worth more than his entire kingdom, and shook it carefully. Then Maya, not wanting to be left out, threw her arms around his neck, and I watched the Alpha King who commanded armies and ruled territories simply dissolve, his arms coming up to hold his daughter like she might disappear if he let go. The moment was shattered by Victoria's voice, venomous and sharp. This isn't over, Damon. My father will hear of this, and when he does, your father will hear that you attempted to murder children and committed arson in Northern Territory. Interrupted a new voice, cultured and feminine, and absolutely authoritative. Which, I believe, are both capital offenses under pack law. We all turned to see a woman approaching through the smoke, flanked by 6 wolves in formal guard uniforms. She was perhaps 60, her silver hair swept up elegantly, her bearing regal despite the late hour and casual clothes. But it was her eyes, the same storm gray as Damon's, that gave away her identity. Mother, Damon breathed, standing quickly, the children still clinging to him. I didn't send for you. No, you've been rather occupied, from what I understand. The former Alpha Queen, Damon's mother, whose name I suddenly couldn't remember through the shock, surveyed the scene with sharp intelligence, missing nothing. The burning cottage, Victoria's disheveled state, Damon's nakedness and wounds, my bloody shoulder, the children pressed against their father. I came as soon as I heard about the incident in the square. Imagine my surprise when my informants reported not only the appearance of a former mate and secret grandchildren, but also a rogue attack and attempted arson. Her gaze settled on Victoria with cold disdain. The Eastern Alliance has overplayed its hand spectacularly. Your son dishonored our agreement, Victoria spat. He exercised his right as Alpha King to dissolve a political engagement when presented with compelling personal circumstances. The former queen's voice could have frozen fire. The fact that you responded with violence against civilians, including children, rather than accepting this with grace, speaks volumes about the Eastern Alliance's stability. I will be recommending to the Council that all treaties with your territory be suspended, pending a full investigation. Victoria's face went white. You can't. I can. I have. Guards. Escort this woman to the border and ensure she crosses it. If she attempts to return to Northern Territory, she is to be detained for trial. The former queen made a dismissive gesture, and Victoria was surrounded, her protests falling on deaf ears as she was marched away into the darkness. Only when she was gone did the queen's rigid posture soften slightly. She approached us slowly, her eyes moving from Damon to me to the twins with an expression I couldn't quite read. So, she said quietly, these are my grandchildren. Maya peeked out from behind Damon's leg, her natural curiosity overcoming her shyness. Are you the queen, grandmama? A smile touched the older woman's lips. I was once. Now I'm just a grandmother who wishes she'd been told about you sooner. Her eyes met mine, and there was reproach there, but also understanding. Elena, it's been a long time. Your Majesty. I tried to curtsy despite my injuries. Despite the absurdity of the gesture in these circumstances. None of that. You're the mother of my grandchildren, and apparently still have some claim on my son's heart despite your best efforts to run from it. She turned to Damon. You need healing. Both of you. The children need stability. This entire situation is a disaster of epic proportions that will have political ramifications for years. She paused, then smiled. Genuinely smiled. I couldn't be more pleased. Mother, Damon started, sounding exasperated. Hush. You've been a shell of yourself for 3 years, going through motions, accepting arrangements, letting the council dictate your life because you'd given up on having what you actually wanted. Now you have it back, messy and complicated as it is. Don't waste it again. She gestured to her guards, get healers for their injuries, arrange transport to the castle for the entire family, and someone put out that fire before it spreads further. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Healers arrived and tended to our wounds, mine requiring stitches but nothing permanent. Damon's already half healed by his enhanced metabolism. The fire was extinguished, and Mrs. Chen was set up in a new cottage with a generous purse for her trouble and her bravery. The twins, exhausted by excitement and fear, fell asleep in the carriage that would take us to the castle, curled together like puppies. I sat across from them, watching their peaceful faces, feeling the rumble of wheels on road, the sway of expensive suspension. Damon sat beside me, his hand finding mine in the darkness, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Are you ready for this? He asked quietly. Court life, politics, being thrust into the spotlight as the Alpha King's mate? Because once we arrive at the castle, once the council sees the children, there's no going back to quiet village life. I was never ready, I admitted. 3 years ago, I wasn't ready to be rejected, so I ran. Tonight, I wasn't ready to face you, but fate didn't care. I don't think being ready is the point anymore. I think the point is choosing to stay anyway. And are you? Choosing to stay? I looked at our joined hands, at the children who were half him and half me, at the future stretching out uncertain and dangerous and impossibly precious. Yes, I said, I'm staying. We're staying. But Damon, the bond is still severed. I'm still human. The council will fight this, and not just because of politics. They'll have legitimate concerns about, let them have concerns. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. I've spent 3 years living by their rules, making myself into what they needed rather than what I wanted. No more. You are my mate, bond or no bond. These are my children, half human or not. And if the council can't accept that, they can find themselves a new Alpha King. You don't mean that, don't I? His smile was fierce in the darkness. Elena, I've discovered something tonight. Power means nothing if I can't use it to protect what matters. And you, the twins, you matter more than any crown, any territory, any political alliance. Let them test me. Let them challenge this. They'll find out exactly how much I'm willing to burn down to keep my family safe. The carriage rolled through the gates of the castle as dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. I had been here once before, years ago, back when Damon and I were new and everything felt possible. It looked different now, larger, more imposing, the weight of its history pressing down like a physical thing. But as we carried the sleeping children inside, as servants bowed and whispered and stared at the Alpha King with his human mate and half-breed children, I felt something shift inside me. Not confidence exactly, but determination. I had survived 3 years alone. I had birthed and raised 2 children in secret. I had faced rogues and fire and the collapse of every plan I'd ever made. I could survive this too. We could survive this. Welcome home, Damon murmured against my hair as we climbed the grand staircase to rooms being prepared for us. All of you. Home. The word felt foreign and familiar all at once, like coming back to a place you'd left too soon, before you were done learning its contours. But as Maya stirred in my arms and smiled in her sleep, as Ethan mumbled something about horses and burrowed deeper into Damon's shoulder, I thought maybe home wasn't a place at all. Maybe it was just this, the 4 of us together, choosing each other despite the odds. And if the whole world had a problem with that, well, they could take it up with the Alpha King. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of adjustment and challenge. The council convened emergency sessions, their outrage palpable over Damon's dissolution of the Eastern Alliance. But Damon met every challenge with unwavering resolve, his mother standing beside him, reminding them that an Alpha's first duty was to his bloodline, and his children, all of his children, were under his protection. Maya and Ethan adapted with the resilience of youth, enchanted by the castle's grandeur, the endless gardens to explore, and yes, the stables full of horses that Damon personally introduced them to. I watched my son's face light up the first time he sat on a horse, watched my daughter overcome her fear with her father's patient encouragement, and felt pieces of my heart I hadn't known were broken begin to heal. The bond remained severed. I could feel its absence like a phantom limb. But Damon courted me anyway, with the patience and determination of a man who knew what he'd lost and refused to lose it again. Flowers appeared in my rooms, quiet dinners were arranged. He asked about my life in Ashford, about the children's favorite stories, about my dreams for the future, and he listened like my words were scripture. And slowly, carefully, I let myself believe that this could work, believe that I deserved this, believe that love, even complicated and scarred and rebuilt from ruins, could be enough. 6 months after that chaotic night in Ashford, Damon took me back to the old mill, now cleaned and repaired, transformed from a site of violence into something peaceful. The river rushed beside us as the sun set, painting everything gold. "I wanted to give you a choice," he said, kneeling before me like I was something precious. 3 years ago, I never got to ask. You never got to answer. So I'm asking now, with no politics, no pressure, no counsel breathing down our necks. Elena, will you be my mate? Will you stand beside me, not because you have to, but because you choose to? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you were never second choice, never a liability, never anything but the best thing that ever happened to me? I looked at this man, this alpha king who commanded thousands but knelt before me with his heart in his hands, and I saw our future spreading out before us. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, opposition, moments of doubt, but we would face them together. "Yes," I whispered, pulling him up to kiss me as the sun painted us both in fire. "Yes, I choose you. I choose us. I choose this impossible, beautiful, terrifying thing we're building." The bond, when he marked me again that night, snapped into place like it had never been severed, like 3 years of separation had been nothing but a bad dream. And this time, when I felt the connection sing between us, his heart, my heart, beating in synchrony, I didn't run from it. I ran toward it, toward him, toward home. And we lived, not happily ever after, because life is never that simple, but fully, fiercely, and together. The Alpha King, his human queen, and the twin children who proved that sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones we choose to forge, again and again, despite every reason not to. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.